Anyone who has already read my previous works knows that thinking means talking to my own self, making a symbolic exchange with my own self. Strictly speaking, this kind of symbolic exchange, which is thinking, is a beautiful proof that the essence of our brain is different than the essence of our psyche. Because in the act of thinking, my psyche finds even an interlocutor in my brain, as if it was a stranger, someone from the environment, and the brain is a stranger. This is why in our minds we have had so many times heated arguments and discussions, although nobody knows with whom. From now on, we know it. This is our brain, who is the interlocutor of our psyche. Okay, but how is it possible for the psyche and the brain to communicate with each other when only a few moments ago I claimed that both come from two completely different dimensions? Yes, it's true. Our psyche and our brain are of two incomparable dimensions. One is symbolic and the other physical. In order for them to be able to talk to each other, one of them would have to be able to move to another dimension. And this is our brain, who can do it. His electromagnetic waves emissions, no longer spontaneous but deliberate, are thoughts, and thoughts are a symbolic dimension. But here there is unexpectedly difficulty in my conception of the two different essences of the brain and the psyche. For when we think, as I say, that our psyche talks to our brain, okay, but if the brain is the interlocutor alien to our psyche, who is the symbolic me of our psyche? In other words, in the conversation of our me with our brain, where this psyche me is born, since in our brain, alien to our me, it cannot be born. Contrary to appearances, the answer to this question is easy. If we proceed in the spirit of my definition of the psyche, and the me is, of course, the epicenter of this psyche definition. Since I define the psyche as a process of symbolic exchange with the environment, and as I have emphasized many times, it's a process and therefore a dynamic phenomenon. This feature of being dynamic is also the feature of the me. This means that the psychic me is not an object of the space, but it is also a dynamic phenomenon which happens in time. This is the difference between a static being and the symbolic being. The first, the static, is a being in space and in time, and the symbolic being happens only in time. Therefore, I do not use the word to be to describe the psyche, but to happen. So I go back to that symbolic conversation of our me with our brain, which takes place when we think. Naturally, in order for it to take place, the brain must pass to the same dimension in which the me of our psyche is happening, and thus to the symbolic dimension. And of course, our brain can do this because it can emit deliberate electromagnetic waves, and these are the physical record of symbols. These symbols are our thoughts, and the brain can also, following the example of the me of the psyche, create among these symbols and how its own symbolic me. And it is with this symbolic me of our brain that our psyche me communicates during thinking. We came to a quite unexpected situation because it's much easier for us to understand what the symbolic me of the alien to us brain is than to understand the symbolic me of our psyche. It's difficult to accept the fact that our psyche me only happens, and actually, just like our psyche, happens between us and the environment and the form next to us, and the symbolic me of our brain, which is also alien to us, happens in our brain, although it is also psychologically alien to us. It's also difficult to accept the fact that our brain is not psychologically ourselves, but has its own psychological life, independent of our psyche. That sounds really ridiculous. Therefore, let's once again take a closer look at the essence of our brain, and let's once again thoroughly criticize the conclusions of our study to date. Let's start with the most controversial issue, namely the thesis that the brain of each of us has its own psyche life independent of our psyche. There is no other such organ among all the organs of the body. The brain, let's emphasize, the human brain is the place where a person passes from the dimension of physical space, the dimension where all the nature lives, alive and inanimate, to an even higher dimension of existence, the symbolic dimension, the psyche dimension. As I wrote in these and earlier works, it was made possible by the phenomenon of continuous spontaneous electromagnetic waves of the brain, which the brain has learned to moderate over millions of years in order to emit deliberate electromagnetic waves. Continuous spontaneous electromagnetic waves are the anxiety, and deliberate electromagnetic waves are the thoughts. Emitting intentional electromagnetic waves, that's thinking, is a function of the brain as a whole. In addition, individual parts of the brain play an infinite number of roles, such as the headquarters of all senses and the coordination of movement of all parts of the body, as well as the center of the endocrine system, etc. As we can see, the brain is in every way the lord of our body, and even more, it is also the lord of our psyche.